Hi, and welcome to Just Trying Dad. Alright, so welcome to this episode of Just Trying Dad. And with me, I have a friend, a very like-minded individual, somebody that we've had a lot of conversations, lots of similar situations happen to us in life, and you'll find out through the episodes. I'm not gonna go through and like do his introduction any less justice. But at least I wanted to introduce Franklyn, my friend, and I'll give him a chance to kind of introduce himself, because I know there's a doctor in front there, and I don't, you know how we are about the DR. You can't not come correct. So I'll give him a chance to kind of give you guys an overview of who he is and why he's on the pod. So yeah, take it away.
Hello, everyone. As my good old friend had mentioned, there is a doctor, but we don't really need to use titles here. I feel as if that we are all family in a sense. And I'm a firm believer, and that's a different story for another day on how that doctor is truly used and what those credentials typically come after a name. But at the same time, my name is Franklyn. If you do during this whole recording hear a child crying in the background, just know that is my daughter, and no children were harmed during today's experiment as well as today's recording. But at the same time, whenever I get stomped whenever these questions says about to introduce myself or tell people about myself. What can I say? I'm Nigerian. I'm an Igbo boy. I have a wife, a beautiful wife, and a beautiful young daughter. Those are the things that I typically use to identify myself first. In fact, I would say more I'm a child of God first, and then I use that as also to describe myself. And then after that, everything else comes as to what I do. So just to keep that short and sweet, I'm a pharmacist by profession. I did grad school here in Maryland and ended up staying. I was a dual degree and did both my doctorate as well as my master's in business. Currently, right now, I work within the IT space as an IT pharmacist, and also juggling all of that with being, a very present dad to me is also very important. So I always pretty much put my job description as husband first, and then dad, and then everything else that comes after, as I explained earlier on. So that should be a good enough intro, I hope.
No, that's. I think you're we're all in the same camp where it's like it's like interview again, and I don't think we've interviewed in a very long time, thankfully. But it's like, tell me about yourself, and I'm like, who am I? I think, do you find, and I think it ties, like, do you find that you lose sometimes as a parent, you tend to lose your identity, because everything with school, with daycare, with doctor's offices, it's like you're Penelope's dad, yeah.
It's funny that you said that because I was just thinking about that exact question this week. It's like it's a running hamster wheel. So finding myself, it's two-sided. On one side, I feel as if I forget who I am because I'm Raylan's dad. I'm her caregiver when she's sick. I am her
Right.
comfort when she needs to be comforted in that state and point. I am goofy dad as always, right? But at the same time, it's also then finding. I guess the idea is one to still have my own identity, but at the same time, still kind of finding joy within those moments, even though
Mhm.
it's been extremely it's go go go, right? So you wake up and the first thing you're thinking about, okay, so how's she feeling? Or because as I don't think I mentioned earlier on, is that currently my daughter kind of got sick, and that's the reason why I alluded to um, being her caregiver, being all these other things that need to be done, as well as wearing those multiple hats, right? Sometimes having to take off one hat of fatherhood and say, okay, I need to do this. You're not going to like it, but I have to do it. And I have to
Mhm.
still be very logical with my background and implement that. And then other times it's like, okay, I got to drop that and then also be dad, but still finding joy within those little points. Like when she comes, she came in this morning, funny enough, and I have this Bluetooth speaker. It's big. She thinks it's Alexa. She's out here talking. She's like, Alexa, play Rain Rain Go Away by Coco Melon. I'm like, what? Like, what are we doing here? Like, I didn't even have the confidence at that point to tell her, Mama, it is not Alexa. She just kept on going, and she said it and slowed down her voice. Echo, play Rain Rain Go Away by Coco Melon. I was like, it's not gonna happen, but those little moments can be very rewarding to me, at least I think personally. So
Hopefully, you pulled the phone out and recorded those. That's blackmail. That's the kind of thing where you're just like, look, you did this when you were younger.
it was so funny because I didn't want to pull out my phone and she stopped doing it, but
Right.
I kind of like signaled my wife. I'm like, "Do you
Sly.
see what she's doing right now?" It's like,
Right.
are you seeing this? And she's like, "Yeah, she always does." I'm like, "Yeah," but the funny thing is, she's sitting by it and she's talking to it and commanding it to speak, and it's not, but she just keeps on going. It was one of the funniest things this morning that I could say of note that I had throughout the whole day.
No, that's my kids. I could talk your ear off, and I'm sure we will offline about my kids and Google. They can buy. I mean, everything in my house is connected to Google, so they can bypass the TV. They can turn it on. They can turn on Disney Plus. They can rent movies. On we've fought that fight with them, but it's a losing battle. Once they know how to do it, it's all over. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
um,
change Alexa's name back to Alexa and keep her on the toes. That's the only way I'm gonna have to survive this moment. That's it. That's all I can do.
yeah. So I think you've already alluded to it, like hands-on, pretty hands-on dad. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about is, I read this funny article about on allprodads.com about 5 types of dads. I know there's different types, there's different flavors. There's handy dad, but I think these five were funny because it kind of used military speak.
Hmm.
And I didn't serve in the military. I don't know if you did, but it's like it uses military speak to categorize dad. So you have like AWOL dad, POW dad, active duty dad, reserve duty dad. So I guess which one do you think? I think I know what you're going to say, but which one do you think kind of encapsulates your journey
Me?
so far and what you strive
Um,
to be?
I think that I'm definitely active duty, to a large point. But I also think that you can have, and this might be taking this way too deep. And folks, I blame Chiadu for having me on this show because he knows how my mind works. And this he's not new to this. So I'm about to take this probably way deeper than it should go. But I think that we as dads we kind of rotate through like some
Hmm.
parts, right? So it's like okay, active duty dads. Sometimes we're reserve dads, right? Because sometimes it's like we're activated, but we're kind of on reserve, right? So there are times where we need to know when to kind of step back and let either our spouses or even just let our kids be kids. And in those senses, that's one part that I'm still struggling with because I'm like,
Hmm.
don't do this. And then she gonna look at me and then smile and then do it. And I'm like, and then or she hurts herself and then she starts calling daddy. I'm just like, but I mean, I told you not to do that.
Consequences.
So I think that we can all be different parts. We can also be AWOL. Sometimes, I
Hmm.
don't know about you, but me, it's like if I can just get like an hour, I'm like, oh, what do we need in the house, babe? Oh, okay, we need to go to Walmart, a Target run. Say less. I'll be back. That is my mind. That right there is AWOL dad. Dad, even though dad said where he was going, but then all of a sudden you're getting a call. Oh, it's been 1 hour, and literally, I
To
am
the minute. Yeah.
in. Yeah, I'm in the grocery store. I'm picking up something. I'm picking up other stuff. I don't know when time goes, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you went to go do this, and it's been 2 hours. Wow, that my definition is AWOL dad. So I think I've probably been through a whole lot. PW, what was that one? Because I don't really know that one. That
POW,
one,
prisoner of war. It's just
uh,
like a bad relationship. That's it. It's just,
oh no,
yeah.
I don't think I've been to that.
It's a
No,
hostage
yet.
situation at that point in time.
I mean, honestly, okay, that if it's a hostage situation, then we've all been there. You know for yourself, Chido, when you're either trying to leave and your kids know that you're about to leave, it could be you just wear your certain pair of shoes, right? You know this. Wear a pair of shoes, wear a hat, wear anything else. My daughter will drop everything that she's doing. Doesn't matter whatever is going on, she's picking it up She's
Where are
dropping
we
it, and
going?
she just, where are we going? I'm like, no, daddy has to go somewhere. And at that point in time, you can't go in because it's crying, it's the theatrics, it's the full waterworks. And you're like, wow. So I guess we've all been, in my mind.
Yeah. You definitely took that. It's basically all of the above. But
But
it
which one I
makes sense
resonate
when you
with?
think about it. You need breaks, and it definitely is something I've noticed in the process of
Hmm.
fatherhood, where it's like if you don't take the time for your mind and your mental space, it's probably not going to be a good result for the
Exactly.
kids. But so no, definitely appreciate you kind of going through that whole trick question, or I will say, it's in the category of spirit animal, because at the end of the day, there's no one rule for what type of dad you are. There's only just
That's true.
trying, and just striving. So
Mm.
no, I appreciate you
Yeah.
taking that. So yeah, if you're ready to jump into the main crux of this episode, I think we all we know why we're here, and it's because of a conversation we had. So just to set the table a little bit, like you and I were part of the wedding party for a mutual friend a couple weeks ago. I say a couple weeks ago now. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
was.
has
That's
been.
about right. Yeah, and you're still buzzing from that time. I haven't been outside. So it was the time. It was a vibe, like the kids like to say, and it was really really interesting just to kind of come out of quarantine and do that. And best believe my wife made me test before I get there, and then test before I got
Got,
back. What I didn't
got
tell you guys was that I literally like had to like quarantine in my basement, and then tested, and then finally got my test. And I was like, I'm back, kids. I know you've been hearing me downstairs, but now we can actually hang out.
you. Just Peggy.
But yeah, no.
I
So
definitely did.
she doesn't play.
Does
She
not
doesn't
play at
play.
all.
Um, so we were. I think one of the reason why that's important is because the wedding festivities coincided with the 10th anniversary of my father's passing. And I say
Mhm.
passing because I mean he didn't leave willingly, but death just sounds harsh and brings up emotion. And I think one of the things it came up in a roundabout way, and you were one of the first people to reach out to me, and I really appreciated the conversation we had at breakfast at that was it Thursday Friday morning,
It was
and
Friday in the morning.
yeah, and that part of that sparked this episode and brought an idea to my head where um we can't be the only ones. I think for me it's 10, for you it's 11, and there's timings, there's cycles, there's situations, there's moods that come with it, there's memories, there's all these things. But I really wanted to get down to your own journey, parenting while grieving the loss of a loved father or a
Hmm.
loved parent.
Yeah, yeah, sure thing. I think that first of all, when I reached out to you that morning and you made mention of it, one thing I didn't tell you that I just told God, I was like, Lord, please just control whatever it is I say, when I do meet you to have this conversation, because I think it's something that only those who might have lost a parent, or I would say, because that's what lost a father or a parent in a sense, are able to truly understand. Because most of the time for me, I felt very siloed. I felt, even within my marriage, because my wife has her parents, both parents are still alive, who are my in-laws, and there are my parents as well. Um, and it was also times very hard for me to have conversations with her when I was either in a space of grieving, or just having a good memory. People always think that we are expected to kind of just have and be full of joy during those times, but not understanding that how my mind tends to run down a rabbit hole, like I just did early on in our episode. I started to think about the what ifs, right, and saying, what if he was here, and all that other stuff. He just kind of takes you down a major zone. So, for the grieving part in itself, I don't think people have said that you need to grieve properly or let yourself grieve. And to give a bit of context, I don't think I did. I lost my father during my first year of pharmacy school, and to get into more specifics, first year of pharmacy school towards the end, towards the beginning of it, he was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. And he was in Nigeria. He came over here to California. He went for treatment at one of the cancer centers out there. I think it's, yeah, I remember well, the City of Hope, which had specialized a lot back then, in the years, for just treatment of cancer patients and all different kind of cancers. And the journey was really, by the time they had already caught it, I know that most of us, and just to give more context, when once cancer has moved into stage 4, it has metastasized into different parts
Right.
of the body, typically in the lymph nodes and sometimes in other organs like the liver, and even sometimes into bone or even to the spine. And so, therefore, then I was much younger. I was just like, okay, it's stage 4, and I knew the context of what it was, but I also had faith, and we were just walking through our journey. And I remember one of my conversations that I had with my dad, which was that it was when he was in Cali, and I flew out to see him, and I asked him, "Hey, Dad, are you scared?" And he says to me, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "Is there a specific reason?" And he says, "Well, actually, I didn't even answer. He just said, well, not necessarily about death, but it was more about the things that he hadn't done yet,
Mm.
that he didn't know if he would be able to accomplish." And I've kind of held on to that mindset too, because you just never know those things. But speaking of when after he passed, I just jumped right back into school, because if I hadn't, I would have been delayed a year, and it would just have been
Mm.
a couple of. It was so crazy when it came to the burial and all that arrangement while during the time period, which we might get into later on. But I was speaking on the point of not being able to grieve, because you just throw yourself back into work. Most of us, especially as men, sometimes just go ahead and just jump back in. I tried to go to counseling, which my school had offered for 30 minutes, but you can barely unburden anything within a 30 minutes time frame. And so I was also in a part of grieving where if I'm talking to somebody and I don't feel as if they understand me, I just typically shut down. And so
Right.
therefore I just was not in a space to fully grieve, and just kind of just tucked it away. So moving now into a space of where I am currently as being, well, it took years, right? So I would have I might be good. Well, let me also keep on talking about the grieving process. I moved into a space of, I felt as if I was very destructive, and this could have been in different relationships that I was with different people, friends, also to myself. Started to kind of drink a whole lot more. Things that were because I was numb pretty much, and I just needed to feel. And so moving out of that stage, which was not easy, but getting out of there and to now where I would typically see, it's always, it's been, first of all, 11 years just moved just like that. I still remember when I was back home with him, because I ended up flying back home to Nigeria with him. And we checked into a hospital, and because he wanted to be home when he passed, I remembered everything. I remembered our conversation. I remembered our quarrels that we had during that time. Crazy, right? But I recall
Mm-hmm.
that every time we did have a little bit of disagreements, or more so disagreement, he would always be very quick to kind of mitigate that within myself and him.
Right.
But I remembered all this within 11 years, and to be honest with you, it just feels like it was yesterday. You know what I mean? I still remember I still remember everything. Even when I went back to our place of residence in Nigeria, to his room, and seen everything the way it was, those things still kind of, I broke down. It was very emotional time for me,
Right.
because the things were there, but his absence was felt, right? He wasn't there. But needless to say, nowadays, it just kind of comes in waves. So his birthday, the anniversaries of his death, Father's Day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
those things for me are and the point in time, even my birthday, because my birthday was a week from his. So before, I just didn't even like to celebrate my birthday because I knew his was coming up, and I would already just have this cloud over me
Yeah.
during those times, you know. So how have I been doing that now as well as being a parent? I think, even though I know I gave a very roundabout place, but I had to kind of give a bit more context, a little bit more
Hmm.
context to that question. I think that now, say for instance, case in point, when I see my daughter, or like on Father's Day, and it's meant to be a celebratory day, and I kind of feel down because I remember my dad, right? But then I look at this little girl, and to her, every day is Christmas, right? Right now, she
Right.
turned two, on August 22nd, and as long as her daddy's there, she's fine with it. She doesn't care about anything else. And I look at her, and there's this sense of joy that I now have. It's kind of a mix of joy as well as sadness that I have also now stepped into the shoes of the title father. When I felt that my father left, and I won't say left intentionally, but he passed and transitioned, and I didn't think I was even ready to assume the mantle. You understand? So those are the kind of things that I kind of go through now within fatherhood. But then also taking it a step further now into seeing how could I be better? Because looking since I've been able to step into this role, I came to truly understand that my father was just a man.
Hmm.
And I don't think that a lot of us truly realize these things until you get married, until you have kids, until you have then assumed that mantle, you understand the burden that it is. Because I'm
Right.
not saying that it's a bad burden. It is just it's a responsibility, and understanding the mistakes that might have been made, the directions in life that in his mind he might have thought that the family would go to that direction and it would be the right decision, but inevitably did not really pan out that way. Having to be able to go back to the drawing board, having the ability to, for me, also to look how better to raise my daughter in a sense,
Hmm.
um, you know, be more present and do a lot of other things in that space. So I think that's kind of how my full journey within fatherhood, and it's never to come off and say that the journey is based off the fact that my dad made too many mistakes. No, it's literally just understanding that if I don't aspire to do better, then I'm doing his legacy a disservice.
Right.
And understanding that as I walk this journey, I'm now more understanding now. I actually understand him a bit more, which is insane because he's not here. So,
So for me, it's one of the situations where, like you say, our Igbo people say, "You're not a man until your father passes." Sounds cruel, but you really understand it when all these things happen to you. When you live life, you realize, oh, now I have to be responsible for another life. Now I have to, you know, to love someone else unconditionally the way I should love myself when I don't necessarily know how to love myself, or didn't necessarily know how to love myself. And you realize that it's really nothing, and that's part of why this podcast is important, because fatherhood is nothing special. It's nothing new. It's humans being humans and making mistakes. And so it's one of those things where I want to interject with my own. It's been 10 years now. And for me, very similar situations in not grieving properly and just bouncing back into grad school and just let's just get it done and then almost flunking out. Um, but it was a situation where um, this was sudden. This was an aneurysm. This was something somebody had just seen like maybe 2 weeks to a month before he passed. He moved back to Nigeria before grad school and spent time. We played soccer. We ran marathons. We ran miles. All of a sudden, I get a call that ends my world. And I think I was just reading Chimamanda Adichie's notes on grief, and it said grief is a cruel kind of education, right? You've told other people probably, they're in a better place. they're doing okay. They've gone to God. They're resting in peace. You know, eternal rest grant upon them. All those things you've mourned, but you don't know grief until you've touched its core. Until it's you. You're grieving the beloved parent, and that's something that I realized. It hits different. There's times when I'm sitting down and I'm listening to something as innocuous as Kid's "Love My Baby," which was his favorite song that summer before he passed, and tears just start. It's a happy song, right? But tears just start falling out of my eye, and I'm just like, what's happening here? And it's the fact that I haven't unpacked that process, and I haven't really understood what is happening, and I haven't really kind of gone through and seen the process. It's good to hear that, and you like I said, counseling, and it's only now many years after in therapy that I'm just like, oh, okay, they're touching nerves here and there, and they're uncovering, unpacking things, and I'm like, don't go there. That's a dark place that I've saved away, and it's part of the mystique of being a, a guy. But at the end of the day, you find that it's things that come out in the most awkward way, that, like, anxiety, the depression, that's just things that are not helpful to being a father, which is a job that has no breaks and no times off. But yeah, um, very similar situations. The other thing I wanted to discuss with you or kind of bring up was the I don't know if it's the failing, but it is the limitations of the Igbo burial rite process, right? and you chuckle, you smile. First of all, Igbo Kwenu. I love being Igbo. That is my identity. That is my antecedents. Love it. But especially when you've been away and you've seen, and you're almost like a very very not emotional but circumspect individual, it pales in comparison to what it's supposed to be. It tends to be, yes, it is celebration of life, and I love that part, but it's also the whole age grades and dues and retroactive squabbles and all kinds of histories. So yeah, no, I laid the table for you to kind of talk, and I know we probably have similar experiences, but it just seems like it does a bit of a disservice and probably needs a bit of an update.
I agree. I think that I won't even stop at just us being Igbos, but then also just being us Nigerians to a certain point, because it starts to be squabble over property and a couple of other stuff that should never really be equated with the event. But to start really from my father's burial, just the putting together of the burial seemed to already have its strains. I had to kind of, I mean, where do you even start? It was the being part of the conversations as to what should happen, and my mom and her family, and it just kind of seemed like there was just a bit more friction between both families at that point. It was almost like it was either unresolved issues that kind of just transpired and really showed up during those times. But the Igbo tradition of you would have, at least for us, we had the wake keeping, and then the next day was kind of meant to be the celebratory, you celebrate life. Um, it was just, it was, it was an event that I felt kind of fast forwarded the opportunity to technically grieve. It was weird,
Hmm.
especially from a man's standpoint, because here I am during the wake keeping, and I'm back. We're back in the village, Bukwibo, and we are there. My mom and my brother come, and we see my dad, and my mom breaks down. My brother breaks down, and I'm here trying to hold it all together. I have one on one
Right.
arm, the other one on the other arm, because I think I didn't mention it earlier on, people, but I am the first son, and with being the first son, there is a lot that kind of falls into your lap once your father has passed, in a sense, within our culture. So, from moving from that kind of a space to being told, oh, I have to be here, I have to greet these people, I have to kind of be present here so that it's a means of entertaining, and then move into the next day when it was a celebrating life, and there are people who are here dancing that I have pretty much I might never have even seen them in my life.
Hmm.
But I mean, they know who I was, and I know it comes from a space of and a place of mourning and trying to stand in solidarity. But it just kind of, for me, it seemed like okay, and people are holding up his picture, and then they're dancing. One person that was actually holding up the picture was either meant to be like either a cousin of mine that was kind of living with my dad at that point. So, you know, she was doing that, but myself and my brother were all in the forefront. And then we come to the compound that we're meant to be at, and the sun is hitting. It's hot. Myself and my brother are in the sun, but the elders and the chiefs are in a canopy,
Shaded, yeah.
shaded, right? And you know, we're told that we have to be there. We have to receive people who are coming in to pay their condolences. Till in that same day, things kind of just went extremely left when the dispute between my mother's family and um, my father's family kind of came to a head. Not even at the event, but at my uncle's house, right? When they decide to come and try and pay tribute, and they were told which in-laws or which in-laws are trying to come do that, which kind of set things in a different perspective. So we had to be rushed off. Myself and my brother had to be, and the whole family, really, my mom, we had to be rushed out of the village because of different things that, even till this day, looking back, I don't even know. All I just know was I was told that we need to move, and I ended up moving.
Yeah.
I even got to a point where, because of that, it seemed as if my father's family had his older brother had called me once and almost came off as stating that he was disowning myself and my brother, which he can't, because my
Hmm.
brother and I are the only sons of my father, and we hold my father's name. So, but these are the dramas that typically would happen, that I kind of went through. And I know it seems like I'm giving a very vague a
No,
vague
it's
explanation, but
detailed
I suppose
enough.
but if I decide to go in, I'd be like, I would just get lost through so many rabbit holes, man. It was insane. And until this day, I think you and I were talking about this on that Friday. I was like, I said one thing too. I said, you know, I am a person that I uphold tradition. I love culture. But what checks do we have to make sure that
Hmm.
culture is still being appropriate within the day and age that we are in today? Now, some people may say, and when I say this, they may look back and say, "Oh, well, what does he know about culture?" Because, oh, if you don't know where you come from, you can never know where you're going. And I agree.
Right, where you going?
But
Yeah.
but I always answer people, but if you keep on looking backwards, then you're going to trip while moving forward. So at the
There's
end of
no
the
evolution.
day, exactly, you know, and it's not to say that our people are not dynamic people. We are. We adapt. We adapt like no other. The only thing I just have a question about is, like, especially even when you're looking at the burial rites, and you have to then pay homage to Umada, and then
Hmm.
it's just I don't even know
The
where
shaving
to
of the
even
head and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, the putting of the dark cloth on for how many 7 days, and only if my father, or if there was a girl in my family, the only women can actually take that off, and if not, then my mother would have had to wear that cloth um, for a very long time.
Yeah, it
It's
almost sounds like a hazing process in
pretty
many
much.
ways. What in one of my conversations, so I'm a second son. I don't want to say thankfully, but one of my conversations with my older brother, and when we reminisce and talk about those moments in the anniversary period, I almost kind of want, and I said this once to him, like, heavy is the head that wears the Diokpa crown. Diokpa means
Oldest.
first son, and he said to me, like, it's not that, but what I was trying to convey was thank you for what you do,
Mm,
because not everybody has the strength to go through that. there's the traditional rights, but there's also the other things that you have to do with inheritance and with the government and filing forms. Otherwise, the government keeps your money.
Money, yes.
So there's a bunch of stuff that just is very difficult, but it takes a very and that's part of why the grieving process is not necessarily for the person in the helm of things and controlling those things, because you have to keep going.
You have to keep
But I
moving.
think I think as a transition, one of the things that is important is it's 11 years. You know more. You've kind of reflected more. Do you find that you find comfort in habits that he used to do or things that he used to do, your dad used to do?
Funny that you said that. So, a great example was, and I don't, if people who listen to this podcast would like to judge me, I'm already for it. So, once I left grad school, right, I was like, another book, I don't even want to have to read another book
Hmm.
unless it was for an exam or anything else I'm trying to do. But the amount of reading that I had done within grad kind of truly felt in me in a way to kind of discourage me from either reading again, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny that you say that because so within the past 2 years, I've been saying that I wanted to kind of get back into reading because there was a time where my dad, no matter where he would go, he had a book with him every single time. And I can remember this was yesterday. So he would either be taking his Bible with him or it was a book, right? And in his pocket,
Hmm.
he always had sweets. So Tom Tom, whatever it is, kind of for some reason he always had sweets in his pocket. I don't know why I remember that, but I remember it when I was younger. I would always try to come, and the moment he shows up, and who knows, he might just pick it up because he was coming home.
Hmm.
But I just never had the chance to ask him. But we would always either just take whatever was in his pockets. So now I'm in the space of reading, and I'm going through my library, and there was this book that because trying to move things from Nigeria, there's some things kind of just they
Right.
they fall away. But I had gone to a library and actually gone to Barnes and Nobles, and I remember that my father had talked to me about there were books that he wanted me to read. He wanted me to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. He also wanted me to read
Hmm.
The Richest
The
Man in Babylon.
classics.
Yeah, but
Right.
he wanted me to read The Richest Man in Babylon. So now that I kind of grow old, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was a kid, but you have to then read that book by Robert Kiyosaki again when you're older to truly understand what it really is trying to tell you, at least in my opinion.
Hmm.
So I buy that book, but then I then buy The Richest Man in Babylon, and then I come home and I'm going through my library, right? I'm trying to put books, and I see the same book, and I was like,
You already have it.
what? I already had it, and I pull it out,
Yeah.
and I see my father's handwriting saying Osakwe Library, bro.
Oh wow.
That right there, that hit home for me. So I say this to say, like, when you talked about like just being proud of the things that he did, understanding my dad went through books like it was nothing, right? He
Hmm.
would take it to him either, I'm guessing when he had some downtime at work, he was always reading, always trying to improve himself. Now, within this year, what I did was I set up two of my other boys, made sure to set up like a book club. So we're on book seven, our seventh book now, that will be starting this Saturday. We all have we're all parents, we're husbands, we're parents. We try to set up a time either Saturday, 7 a.m. in the morning, if possible, or some other time in the evening, so that we can go ahead, review the chapters, see how we took it and how it impacts us. And if it talks to us, even as being parents, if it talks to us being men, if it talks to us about being good husbands and whatever it is that we can apply to, we're able to share knowledge in that sense. So creating that space, I've now done that. Now, as I said, within this 1 year, we're already on book seven. So I'm reading now, and it's one
Hmm.
of the things that I truly appreciated that I saw him do. And even though I wanted to run from it, I now understand the importance of why he did it, and that's what I'm doing now. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, I was saying I say that because I find myself doing similar things, and then even with religion, um, I was never the most religious person. I grew up Catholic. I love the church. I love theology. I love everything about it. But going to college in the US and 6,000 miles away, you kind of fall off when you're a younger man. But now it's like if when I go back to Nigeria, even when I'm here, it's like I'm first pew in the church. I'm like, what's happening? Why am I? I used to be at the
Why
back
you?
of the
Why?
church. I'm like, but that's what my dad used to do. Like he's like
Yeah.
literally like first pew, Church of Assumption Falomo. We're there, Divine
Hmm.
Mercy for. I'm like, so it's like it's almost like one of those things where I'm paying homage to him, and it's just interesting to see that happen. But
Even same
definitely,
thing with me, because my father would typically have morning devotion in the mornings.
mhm.
He'd wake us up, and try and wake us up early as a mug, and I'm like, wait, I'm back from secondary school on vacation. I now I have to
sleep
still
sleep
wake
is
up,
important at that
and I
point in
still
time.
have to wake up at like 6 or for us to have devotion. And the funniest thing is, I'm trying to find my balance now with my daughter, because sometimes she wakes up extremely early and or we're just not getting enough sleep. But prior to that, I was also getting into the space of either waking up at 5:30 in the morning, and having devotion, and those things, now understanding why he did it in the morning and not in the evening, because when he did it in the morning, it prepared him for the day. And if I did it
Hmm.
before, I was always thinking I can be able to just do in the evening, same thing. But even with the Word of God, it says in the book of Psalms, David says that in the morning I would seek your face and I would pray and wait expectantly, mainly because it's like you kind of set it up for the day, and it kind of
Hmm.
prepares you for that in that sense. And I never understood that. And when I talked to my mom would say, listen, what you guys didn't even know is that when your dad would wake you up at 6, he already has woken up earlier on and had his own personal devotion, and then he's trying to bring us to try and have the
Yeah,
same.
trying to share.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I said, he wasn't perfect, but I see things, and now I'm doing it, right?
right.
Which is, it makes me happy, because, like I said, and I said earlier on when we started this conversation, it's like now I'm starting to understand him a whole lot more in his absence, right? And to segue into another space, which I'd also talk to you about, is even within this grieving process, now trying to kind of see, and where I am now is where I'm trying to not necessarily forget. He can never be forgotten, because there was a time where I felt as if I did not mourn during the times where it was Father's Day or his birthday around mine, then I
Hmm.
am dishonoring him and almost about to try and forget
Forgetting
him.
him. Yeah.
But I came to the realization that my father's greatest legacy, it was me, was his kids. We carry his name. My daughter carries his name now. Like, that family, and trying now to be in a space of not to be pulled down by those emotions, but to kind of just be reminiscent and be happy. And more so, not just for me, but also for my daughter.
Hmm.
Because taking this even now to a major step forward, Chidu, personally, like if anything happened to me, I don't want my daughter to have a cloud over her head. Like, I've
Hmm.
thought about it, and maybe the reason why I've thought about it is because I've gone through it, but understanding that I do want her to live a happy and fulfilled life. In fact, that would make me so happy wherever that I'm gonna be while I'm in heaven, or while I sleep until the trumpet is blown. I would be resolute, and I'll be happy that she's able to, because there's no way that we can forget our parents. There's no way that we
Hmm.
can forget that, because when my father passed, man, I realized a long time ago, even like how he laughed, and that's the thing about genetics. Even if you thought that you could forget, genetics will remind you that no, like I laughed almost the exact same way my father laughed. You know,
Right.
there were times where that I would literally like shut myself up because I heard him laugh, and it freaked me out, right? But like I said, kind of get into a place where I'm trying now to just be of of a good of good cheer, not celebrating, not seeing that day as a pullback, but more as a spring forward. And
Mm.
in those senses, it's like I'm actually doing his memory justice by doing that, by sitting back and then saying, okay, hey Pop, here we are again. But look at what we have. Look at wherever you are. You see your grandkid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you see how happy she is. And so I think this just kind of started happening. It's just not to say that I'm gonna forget him, because I don't want anybody to ever think that way. I think that for
Right.
me, it just got to a point where it's it's hitting home now for me as being a parent that I need to be able to celebrate him in his memory and understand that he's still here through me. That's one part I never really
Mm-hmm.
got to. And maybe if I was given a chance to fully grieve, maybe if I was able to unpack that earlier on, it might not have taken me this long to get here. But
Right.
I'm not going to tell you that it's been a walk or a cake in the park. No, I think that it's something that I'm trying to do. And if I don't accomplish it, then I, you know, get up, dust myself off, and try again. But being in the space of being a father, I also want to also let my daughter know that I am human. I'm not
Mm.
invincible. I think that when we were kids, we always just felt that way. Even when we were kids, and even when we were in the teenage, where I was 20. Dad passed. I can't remember. I think it was what, 23. Was that 23? Wait, hold on. Yeah, 11 years from now, bro. Yeah, so like 23, right? And but still at that point, before he got sick, man, you couldn't tell me nothing. I thought my dad was
Mm-hmm.
definitely Superman. He was going to be there for everything that I was going to go through in my lifetime. So, kind of giving that same perception to my kids, it's like, listen, daddy's human, but also it
Right.
not just makes me to relish the moments that I have now and really try and make them count. So that's how I've been going through the grieving process, and at the same time being a parent and really trying to then see what that day or those moments and those memories are, but then use them not um, as a drawback and a day for me to get underneath my blanket, but use that as a day to
Mm.
truly celebrate what it is that I have in front of me now, because that is his legacy. And I think we forget that. And I keep on forgetting that because I always think that he's now a memory that is stuck to a day or stuck to
Mm-hmm.
a season. And that is not the case.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I appreciate you for saying that and for coming on the episode. Like it's been insightful, and for me it's one of those things where I always think back to it in this way, like, universe, the worst day of my life has happened. Throw whatever you want at me. I will survive because I've survived this situation. So, Franklin, I thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been, it's been, I trust me, it's been therapy for me. I'm hoping it was for you, and I'm
Oh,
hoping it is for
yes.
the listeners.
Yes.
So thank you. And this was perfect. I'm sure we will talk more, and thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, please, and anytime. And if the listeners would like to hear from me again, of course, I'm not here trying to commandeer the whole podcast, but this has definitely helped me because even within talking, I was also able to unpack stuff that I didn't even realize right now. And I think that's what this podcast is really all about, right? This episode is so that we can start the conversations and talk.
Right.
So I do
Yeah.
appreciate you and thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a true honor.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Just Trying Dad. Please be sure to spread the word, tell a friend, and you can find us wherever podcasts can be found, on Spotify or Google Podcasts, and keep having the conversations, and we'll see you soon.